night we will be hosting the eagerly anticipated Arches project. This is a unique railway project. It's a design-led urban strategy that aims to activate disused spaces in our cities. We have with us Boano Prišmontas, who designed, prototyped and installed these digitally fabricated modular structures in 2 railway arches in South London. It's an interesting project. It's one that straight away caught the attention of our committee for a number of overlapping areas of interest, which we're looking forward to hearing all about. I would like to thank Laura Alvarez for putting Jonas and I in contact with each other, which was approximately 1 year ago. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A tab. Our moderator will be looking at those and picking them up, filtering through them at the end of the presentation. This event is being recorded and will be published on our website and social media channels in due course. Thanks again for attending, and I'll now hand you over to Jonas.
So thank you very much. I have to introduce also Tommaso Boano, who's the other half of the company. So I cannot take the full credit for the project. Right, so thank you so much for this lovely introduction. And we were not expecting to actually do a Zoom call probably like a year ago when we first spoke about this project. So I hope that soon there comes a time where we can come there and see all of you live and put faces to the names that we keep seeing. But it's yeah, it's nice to see you and to at least have this opportunity to talk about this project. So we have a small presentation that we would like to show you, but we're really welcoming all the questions that you may have. Let me try to share the screen now. I think Paul, you might need to grant us access. Let's try again. Yeah.
Okay, just bear with me.
Yeah, I think it's should be happy. Yeah.
I can confirm that is displaying pretty well.
So this is us, and just briefly to say about our company. So Tommaso and I, we met working in big practices several years ago, maybe 6-7 years ago. We started working together maybe 2015, doing some competitions while working in big companies, and then we decided that actually we want to focus more and more on our personal projects. And yeah, Arches project was actually something that gave us the boost to actually go full time on our stuff and keep creating. So when people ask us what do we focus on, we have a long list to say, because we do lots of different scale projects. We don't really do competitions anymore, but we work on small scale of furniture to like a house extension, to now we do some working from home offices and such, and then we go to bigger scale, like fabricating the arches. And also we do some normal architectural projects on the side, but our real passion is doing something that we really enjoy, something of a human scale, and something that we can also fabricate and craft ourselves. We work a lot with all kinds of tools, so we like to make things that we design as well. We really enjoy the fact that whatever we design on the screen, we can pretty much see straight away. So that's why during the Arches project, we upgraded our fabrication lab. So we have CNC machine, we have a laser cutter, and these kind of things that allow us to really create the things that we design straight away. So off to the presentation. Well, Tommaso, do some talking here.
So we started this project in 2017, and this project started as part of a competition, actually, that was run by Minimal Space, We are based in London here. Minimal Space is a company that develops urban strategies and then operates spaces together with the councils. So their role is to partner with the council. In this case, we were working in conjunction with the Lambeth Council and the GLA to basically come up with a strategy to make use of arches. So arches are everywhere. There are up to 3,000 arches in London only. They are not in use. And for the last, 50, 100 years, they've been used as small laboratories for all sorts of craftsmanships and artisans and workers and people that fix cars, but all sorts. So it's really nice to see how these spaces are. They are all different, and they really own lots of knowledge. So it's a space that often you almost don't see. Yeah, it's in the background of our streetscape, but there is so much going on. So the project that we had to come up with as part of this competition was to create a kit of parts that could be quickly assembled and to create a structure that was improving the thermal performance of the space, be totally independent, so like a freestanding structure, modular structure, able to be taken down and moved to a different arch, because there are arches of all different kinds and all different shapes. Some are much bigger than the ones that you see in the photos right now. So the theme was actually creating this kit of parts, because most of the times the people that rent these spaces, they rent for just like a short-term lease, and so they don't invest into transforming all these spaces. And the arches belong to the network rail, so it's very difficult to be able to customize or to do anything different from what network rail usually does, which is just line the inside of the arches.
Sorry. So just want to recap the competition brief set out by the Meanwhile Space, and we're sending our love to them if they're watching. It was very vague, and it had lots of requirements. It was a huge wish list. So like Tommaso was saying, it needs to be freestanding, so you don't drill, you don't fix anything to the bricks. Good thermal performance, flexibility, can be mounted and dismounted. Many other things. But mainly to prevent from the leaks. And you can see here a very leaky arch, although it's much cleaner than what we found. It was actually full of car parts and dead animals and leaves and other exciting things. So this is after, once it was cleaned, and this is how we found, well, not how we found, but this is soon after how we found it. And
the point is, we had to unleash the potential of this space, because it's a great space. It's not exposed or directly exposed to the weather. So what we had to do was creating a plug-in room that could be fitted inside arches of any shape. And then the usage of the space was supposed to be very vague, very open. So, but the scope of the competition was to create space for local businesses and local startups. So that's why Meanwhile Space was working with the Lambeth Council, because it was almost it was a social project. Our vision was to potentially retrofit not just this arch. We were supposed to work on initially 1, then 3 arches, but to create a strategy that could be eventually expanded to all the arches in London and anywhere in the UK really. So the concept was to create very simple kit of parts that could be built and that could guarantee natural light to fill the space. So the outside wall was meant to be translucent. of course, we had to focus on subject like, how secure was the space, how cost effective the structure was, and how easy it was the structure to be built by unskilled people. So there were many challenges that we started to develop, to unravel, I would say. And so this was in 2017. We went to the final stage of the competition. We eventually won, and we won because we presented a one-to-one model of the structure that we wanted to build. Yeah. So our final pitch had like us showing photos of a one-to-one model of the kit of parts. And the kit of parts, as you can see in this photo, was very simple. We had a long beam that was obviously, everything is made with plywood and everything is a flat pack solution. But the beam is a modular, and it sits on a vertical system of boxes that creates a wall at the two ends of the arch. So we can show you actually a model here. We go back to the normal mode, if you can see us. Yeah. So this is a small model that shows the principle of the project. So a series of beams sitting on two modular walls at the two ends of the arches. So in this way, we were guaranteeing the structure to be freestanding, solid, and strong, and all made by modular parts. And it was very easy to insert these boxes in the curvature of the arch, because they work like pixels. So that the pixels kind of approximate the curvature. Yeah. So by filling the arch with these boxes, we could potentially create structure in arches of any size. Yeah. So I'm gonna go back to the presentation. Here we go. Yeah. So this was the first prototype, and obviously it was a prototype, but like it showed that it was possible that we could actually build it.
It was a working prototype.
Yeah, it was a working prototype, and obviously from the point when we won, then we had to really think about all the details and the sequence, of how you build something like that under an arch, because one of the tricky parts was like that you only access the structure from below, so you cannot access the arch, the structure in the arches because there is the vault. Yeah. So there were like lots of little problems that we thought they were manageable, and they actually were. You can see here a diagram that shows how the structure works. So there are two pieces, two sides of the box, let's call it the box, that can be stacked vertically. And then there are connectors on the sides that are put together, and they kind of like stitch the columns of these boxes together to create a wall. Yeah. One key aspect of this design is that the two walls have to be perpendicular, obviously, and they have to be elevated from the ground, so there's no dampness like rising from the floor. Some floors they have beautiful cobbled stones, and some they have like concrete, but every arch is different. So we really had to think of like, how can we be absolutely independent from the sides? So we created these long platforms, like plywood platforms that were like sitting on adjustable plastic risers. And on top of that, we built the two walls and then connected everything with the beams. And this is it. This is what we built. This is one of the arches in Loughborough Junction. In this case, it was the first one that we built, one of the biggest actually. And the arch was extremely leaky and damp. So we were monitoring the temperature inside before and after. And this arch is now used by a carpenter, and he's quite pleased. So which means that the structure works. You see that it was recessed slightly from the street, because in this stage we wanted to first build the first arch and not to expose it directly on the street. So there is this little strip in between the gates and the actual arch, but the facade that you see there potentially can be built in line with the arch's structure. And how this is possible, I mean, how we made it happen. We had a great team of people, mainly collaborators or friends also, that were unskilled carpenters. They were like, you know, like normal people that have passion for maybe building, and they enjoy the building process. But to build this sort of structure, you don't need a carpenter, you don't need contractors. You know, you can do it because every single piece is designed to be lightweight, to be modular, to be simple to connect, and the whole structure of the two walls can be put together in a couple of hours maximum, which is actually great, because think about 3,000 arches and think if one day we would be able to just go there and quickly assemble this structure. It means that in a couple of days of work maximum, you transform an abandoned space into an asset for the neighborhood, for the city. You know? So in this case, you see in this photo, you see us like building the top part of the arch that is like the architrave that overhangs on top of the door, and we have a video also at the end that shows, you know, this in detail. But as you can see from this photo, just a series of boxes, like pixels, that approximate the curvature of the arch. On top of that, there were the beams, and above the beams, there was a layer of insulation. In this case, we have like an aluminum foil insulation that comes in a roll that is unrolled and clipped on the beams, and above that there is a layer of waterproofing. Yeah? So any leak is like directed to the sides of the arch, and then because the structure is elevated from the ground, any leak, I would say, naturally goes into the drainage point that in this case was at the center of the space. What should we say about this? We should say actually one very, very key thing that I forgot to mention, which is that you see a structure that is 7 meters long and almost 4 meters tall, and there are no screws, there's no nails or glue, any fixing used. The only way the structure is built is by using dry joint techniques, which means that the pieces, they slot together. So we had to carefully prototype and craft every single piece in order for the connection to slot in with the right level of tolerance. So we usually work with almost zero tolerance, 0 millimeter tolerance. In this case, probably was like 0.3 millimeters or something like that. But the connection had to be precise. Otherwise, pieces, they start being loose and everything is shaky. So yeah, zero tolerance, dry joints, and no screws and no nails. The challenge was this one, because if you start, you know, drilling things and building this structure, then you cannot take it down. So every component of this arch was supposed to be taken down and moved on pallets to another arch or another space, because you can rebuild the same structure or configure it in a slightly different way. So every component of this project is supposed to have a second life or a third life, you know, like to be relocated and reused somewhere else.
We're talking about this aspect of the assembling and then disassembling is because the lease in these spaces is very uncertain, and also not only the times are uncertain now, but when you're a small manufacturer, the times are always uncertain for you. So when you're renting a space, and you know, if it so happens that you're forced to relocate because you know, the rent just went up, you don't have to waste all the money and the materials that you invested in your space. So you can actually take this with you and go wherever else you go. So it's kind of almost a nomad house that you take it in pieces and take it with you. So apart from the fact that this is compared to the standard construction, this is already a cheaper solution per square meter, but also there's a huge saving in the fact that you don't waste the materials. And we actually proved the fact that you can disassemble it because I think last year, or was it 2 years ago?
Two years. I don't know. Time flies.
Time flies. We built this structure even bigger. It was 7.2 meter long beams, also without any screws or nails. We built it in the 100% design, London in Olympia, which was used as a wood awards, I think, pavilion. So, and then we had to take it down, and the whole thing fit on I think 4 or 5 pallets, and in one van, one truck.
Going back to the space, one thing that I wanted to mention is that, as you can see on the right hand side, you have like the natural light coming in, and it is an incredibly important aspect that if you design a space that doesn't have windows and has just like these big gates that are supposed to be closed 90% of the time because of privacy, because it's cold, you want to create a space that is lit by natural light without losing thermal performance. So in this way, we designed the boxes to be connected to a wall made of polycarbonate by a German company called Rodeca. You see here, we developed the detail of having like a very thin slot in between the vertical connections where we inserted the brackets, and the bracket was then fixed in place. So we had to spend a bit of time thinking about the sequence of how this could be built. And in a way, because we were not just architects in this project, but we are actually the manufacturers and then the installers, this process kind of forced us to have lots of discipline in developing the details in a way that was easy to build and really quick and really simple.
When you have to build it yourself, you really think twice what you're designing. So I think that's a
absolutely
lesson learned.
And another important aspect of this project is the fact that we were manufacturing every single sheet of plywood. So we were cutting it with the CNC, and we were shaping and sizing every single module to fit in a very efficient way. So we worked from the start. We really focused on this to be an almost zero waste project, not only because you reuse every part of it, but also because you don't use you don't waste plywood when cutting it, when manufacturing the pieces. So even the space in between the boxes, that is a space that is not used. We nested inside other components to make use of every part of the plywood sheet. So as you can see in this diagram, from the pieces we have spare boxes, and that's in the boxes we put other pieces, and then we nested even more to create one extra layer where we were making furniture out of the waste.
Russian doll of
exactly
elements.
Yeah. So in this way, we made sure that the budget was tight. So like we didn't want to waste any inch of plywood, and also as a ethical aspect, we really like to work in this way, where we try to be zero waste. I mean, as much as possible. Really. This is another photo of the arch. You see there is a street full of arches. Some have laboratories, mechanics work there. Some workshops, event spaces. There is a music studio now. There is a very vibrant area, but obviously the cost of renting a space in London is crazy. So being able to a couple of days retrofit a space and give it back to the community, this has a great value, and we were very, very pleased to work on a project of this kind. This is a detail that shows the connections between the plywood pieces. So you see that there is this little circle at the end of each slot, because it's called T-bone or dog bone, which is the basically, I mean, I don't want to go too technical, but when you're cutting with a drill bit of the CNC, you need to be able to allow the pieces to slot in at 90. So you need to rebate every corner, and we liked, you know, to show that the manufacturing process was almost dictating also an aesthetic for the project, you know.
So a modern decoration, let's say,
yeah,
that comes out of the manufacturing process that we like to embrace.
Exactly. And all these pieces are birch plywood sheets. This is a detail again of the connection between the beams. And this is a detail that we were very proud of, so much that we put our name on it. It's the detail of the door, because we had this like big door they had to open, and it was a bit challenging to build it at first. So we had to prototype it and build it twice to understand, you know, the forces and 3 times to understand the forces and where and how to, you know, make it open and close without any friction or any problem.
It's important to mention that also the only way we made this possible is by investing whatever you know, winning budget we had from the competition into actually getting our CNC workshop and setting it up next door. So we were, if we had to design these pieces and send them out for an external manufacturer to produce and then them sending it back, that would have killed the budget in the first week probably. So the only way we made it work is by having our own fabrication and having like 0 shipping at all. You just design it, manufacture it, go next door and see if it works, and if it doesn't work, then you go and recut it. And that was the process. But it took a while, because R&D always takes a while. But now that we have the system, we can pretty much build a new arch in a couple of weeks, probably.
Yep. And we really love, you know, to work on modular structures and structural systems, and anything that can be repeated multiple times, because once you've done so much work in trying to solve all the issues and all the problems of one project, you know, starting from scratch, developing something completely different every time sometimes feels like a waste. So if you develop a system, and the system can be built multiple times and have like allow for a degree of flexibility, well, that's what we believe is a winning architecture. You know, is a replicable, but with a criteria. You know,
certain flexibility as well.
So there is a video here of the arches when we rebuilt one of the arches for the Wood Awards pavilion. So I'm gonna show you how easy it was to build. Every time you work on a project of this kind, like if you have to build an installation or a temporary installation, you have 1 day to set it up and 1 day to take it down, usually. So we were very pleased to prove that a structure that was 50 square meters almost, 7.2 meters long and 4.2 meters tall, could be built in just a day. I mean, it was an extended day. It was day and night probably, but you know, it was a very short time. And with a team of 6 people, we were like really fast. And you see the long beams? Yeah, this fast. So you see all the pieces, all the connections, and it was very simple and quite fun actually. And this structure can be built not just under arches, but potentially can take any shape. It can be a square, it can be a cube, it can be a box, it can be any shape. It's a system that kind of infills the spaces that are left in the city. You know, like.
I think building it under the arch was one of the most tricky situations, because there's the brick ceiling, and really struggled to access it. But building it here in this event, it was so much easier because we have we could build scaffolding and we were not banging our head against the brick wall.
Yep. So I think we. Oh no, this is not. This is an old one. Yeah, I think we are done. So yeah, if there are questions or yeah, we will be more than happy to help you. How can I stop this? Yeah, sorry.
Okay, great. I can jump in with a few to get us started while Mick consolidates whatever has come through the Q&A panel. So we'll leave him to tend to that for the moment. I guess there's a number of, as I said at the beginning, there's a number of overlapping areas here that are of particular interest. I think at the time when Jonas contacted myself, I was actually working extensively across the railway industry, and those assertions that the asset volume is vast, it's an understatement. There's a tremendous, enormous universe of railway infrastructure out there. But equally as enormous potentially is the bureaucracy that comes with working in and around railway. How did you find dealing with access permissions to a site which is directly under what's regarded as open rail or live rail? Was that an issue at all?
Well, the competition was in 2017, and we're still waiting for access to a couple of sites that were kind of promised, kind of agreed. So I guess that's one way to answer. The others, yeah, I mean, we didn't have to be directly involved. So I think maybe it's a question to meanwhile space more than us, but we know it's a big machine, so it moves slowly. And yeah, we hope that we will get access to the other sites soon.
Okay, and the goals for the other sites, are they similarly briefed as to these spaces? Are they intended to put in a tenant, like the carpenter?
Exactly. So that structure that we actually built for the design show, that was taken down and it's waiting to go into one of these spaces. And these arches that we're building are part of a bigger master plan in Lambeth, where they're creating community use spaces. There are some new buildings coming up that will be like kitchen and cook school, and spaces for carpenters. And basically the criteria to get one of these spaces is to be just like a young company,
local company.
Local, yeah.
And you, okay, on that note, you mentioned as well at the beginning that the tenancy or the lease agreements tend to be quite short. Is that a directive from the asset owners or like Network Rail or lease holders, or is that a consequence of the nature of the businesses that are taking on those spaces?
Well, I think it's a bit of a consequences of the time that we are living. So like rents, I mean, before people that were renting the arches were like probably having the same contract for 20 years. Now, Network Rail, I think, has a company within Network Rail, which is called Arch Company, which is managing all the rents and the assets basically. So they are reviewing many contracts and many leases for these spaces. So there are things changing everywhere, and I expect that the way they will do the contracts in the future is more flexible, let's say. So our project was a way to respond to that, because we saw that coming. Kind of.
Okay, and then moving into the more technical side of things, regarding the softwares that you would have used, did you carry out any kind of software simulations to further minimize as far as possible the volume of plywood that you used? So for example, have you got that right down to the minimal possible amount based on the load tolerances that you could apply? Or is it a bit of a best guesstimate type situation?
Well, for when you buy a CNC machine, it comes with a certain software, which is quite basic, to be honest. But there is a feature to kind of it's called nesting, to nest all the pieces in the most efficient way. But we find that if you do it manually, you can achieve better results, because sometimes when you have like you want to do that Russian doll effect where you put several pieces in one bigger shape, it doesn't do it very well. So what we ended up doing in the end is doing it manually, just by knowing what kind of tolerances are required, because you cannot put two pieces too close to each other, because the tool bit, the drill that cuts the plywood, also has a thickness, and once you cut, you need to leave a bit of material in between, so the pieces don't move on the sheet. So I mean, we're getting technical, and we can talk about technical for hours, but I don't think you would be too interested. But to answer your question shortly, it's manual work.
Yeah, but also is a matter of understanding the size of each module in relation to the structural load and the weight of the whole structure. So what we did was like sizing each pieces to a way that could work with the facade modules. So the size of the boxes is actually fixed by the panels of the polycarbonate wall, because we wanted the whole system to work in a modular way. So you don't want to have like crazy brackets or things that have to be adjusted on site. So the width of the boxes was fixed, and then the height kind of came logically by from like an aesthetic point of view, but also from the right size that could fit a sheet, and then everything was then also double checked with our engineer. So it's an organic process. There are things that are like changed from multiple aspects.
But the size of the boxes is basically the result. Like Tommaso was saying, the one direction was fixed because that was the facade panel, but then the other one, it was kind of the best solution for creating a size that you don't want to have small boxes, because that's gonna take too long to assemble, and you don't want to have too big, because then they will be too heavy to carry, and they won't fit all kinds of spaces. And finally, then there's the size of the sheet, which is 8 by 4 foot, which is what we use now, and seeing what's the most efficient number between these three things. So it's like you tweak all parameters until you find the most optimum size, and the leftover material is we get creative with what to do with it.
Okay, and probably just one last one from me before I hand over to our moderator. Given the obvious successes of this project, have you had further interest to go down the rabbit hole of anywhere near the 3,000 empty arches that Network Rail are currently in possession of in London, or other assets? So has this piqued the interest to seriously pursue, over a more medium term at least, agenda of working to fit out spaces as you've done?
Yeah. So the COVID obviously came at inconvenient time, I'm sure, for everyone. But not only we were having interest from other bodies, let's say, to use them in external spaces, but we were also having conversations about using that system in other scenarios, like taking over like a big warehouse type space and then dividing it up. So yeah, we had many conversations, but again, many things have stopped. But the best thing that came out of this is that it pushed us more towards direction and thinking of modular and prefabricated houses and structures. Yeah. And workspaces as well, especially workspaces, because there's a very high demand for that in London.
Yeah, I mean, there are conversations that started following the completion of the project, but I think the most promising conversations were with the local councils, because local councils have the keys of unlocking spaces, you know. So there are abandoned car parks that could be converted into co-workings, or like, you know, into office spaces, or there are spaces that need temporary use. So is either on the councils or on developers, or you know, anyone really that has the keys of these spaces, and there are so many everywhere, scattered everywhere. So this structure could be potentially employed to transform all these into an asset that could be temporary, but it could still serve a great purpose.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. I'll hand you over now to Mick.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening, guys. Thank you for the presentation. It was fantastic. Really enjoyed it. I've been really looking forward to this over the past few weeks, actually. And I've been looking at your website over the last few weeks, and I love the whole brand identity that you guys have got, and you're bringing back that 90s vibe with the colours and stuff. It's brilliant. I just wanted to ask a few questions myself before we get into the ones that are in the Q&A. What is your guys' background, and you know, where are you from, and what kind of led you to this point?
Can I go first?
Yeah, sure. So I'm from Lithuania originally, although now I'm saying I'm from London whenever someone asks. I came here to study many years ago now, and then been working in practices of different sizes, from very small to very large, on also projects of different scales. And I think, yeah, I mean, university was really good inspiration of you know, how to do cool and exciting architecture. I think there was a bit of a shock when you leave from education, at least in this country, you leave from education and you have to start in the real world. The things are a bit different, and I think that the whole time since the university till this point was kind of at least I was trying to find my way back into doing more interesting, exciting projects, and you know, like really hands-on things as well, because this is what we did in university. We did lots of prototyping and one-to-one scale mock-ups, and we were really taught to also think about how things are put together in the real scale and in the real world. So that's me, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'm from Italy, from Genoa. I studied in Italy, actually. And after my university, I moved to Spain. I worked at Ensemble Studio for a couple of months, and then I moved to London, and then it was the peak, like, of the crisis at the time. So it was a bit of a journey to work in different practices and you know, gain my experience here. Then I worked in very large practices for a couple of years, working on exciting projects, very different. But then I just felt that it was a bit monotonous. Like I was like, I really suffered the office life, you know, like the fact that every day we were supposed to make architectures, but like my idea of making architecture was more, you know, you make a model, you understand how things are built, and then you do it, you know, instead of doing a lot of coordination. So the architect's life sometimes is about coordinating drawings and making sure that the drawings are then built, and so that process just let me you know, think that maybe doing things in a different way was worth like giving a shot. And when we were like started working together with Jonas, we were like full on in developing artistic projects and concepts and really crazy things that we actually built in Dubai, London, Milan. So it was a very exciting time. And then when we established our practice, then we kind of kept that creative input, and we combine it with a hands-on approach. So yeah, so we both come from architecture, and we both come from, I think, an office life for a couple of years, and that really triggered our passion to then try to do things in a more different way, like, you know, cut everything that is not for us is not worth attention or or it's too time consuming. Cut all the coordination and the diplomacy and all the, you know, we like to design something, prototype it, manufacture it, and then build it. So like from designing to making, it's just like one stream, one workflow.
It's fantastic actually that you say that, because I was just reflecting back on my normal week, and it's probably 10% to 15% of that is actually design, and I'd probably say 50% is trying to make sure that you don't get sued. And the rest is probably coordination and dealing with emails. So it's refreshing to hear that you guys obviously have that passion, and you know, you've taken that jump, and you know, you've taken your own design process forward.
You have also a good percentage of design in your work. I think it's more than what we had in our practice.
Yeah, I suppose you do start at the bottom of the hierarchy, which exists in the UK, and you kind of work your way up, and you get a window seat, and you know, you come out the basement making models or whatever. I suppose my other question that I had, looking at this on a larger scale, you know, there's projects such as Box Park, which originally started out as trying to show that there was a value to that area and helping redevelop it on a larger scale. Have you found with, you know, the project in this case, have you found that is starting to, you know, bring back a value to areas that previously didn't have a value?
Well, having built 2 arches out of 4 that, you know, that was kind of planned for this competition, just those 2 arches already bringing lots of happiness to the people that are using it, because we go see James in Arch 510. He's an amazing carpenter and produces like great furniture, and he never once said that, oh, you know, these beams are too low or it's too cold in here or anything like that. He seems to be really enjoying and doing good business there in his arch. And the other one is a music recording studio that attracts lots of local people from local community, and they're very active on Facebook, I think, on social media. So we can see just by looking at 2 examples, we see that a lot good is happening. I don't know if it's affecting much the borough. I think it is, because it's better than standing vacant, these spaces, generating activity and, you know, just improving the general kind of quality of the space, I suppose.
Fantastic. Well, I suppose we should move on to the questions we've got in the Q&A. So the first question is from Jason Beerton, who is a long-time supporter of the NDSA. He's also a tutor at Nottingham Trent University on the architectural technologies course. He says, amazing project. Thank you for sharing. Did you also consider making modular scaffolding as part of the system build? And do you consider taking the CNC machine and manufacturing in situ? So I think what he's saying is, would you take it on site and potentially spread the process across the country?
Well, we actually did for this particular first 2 arches, because we were supposed to build 4 arches, and then yeah, because of the process of, you know, getting the lease and getting the contract with with the network and everything, we established our factory on site in the arch next door, and we set up our CNC there locally. And that was a great asset, because, you know, it was cutting all the costs for like delivering parts and also like testing things. It was very, very easy. Obviously, it's not something that you can do every time. We were lucky that we had an empty space next to the site, basically, that we could use. Potentially, it's a strategy that is worth considering. I mean, there are companies that they install CNC or robots on containers, you know, and then you just like drive the van and build it on site, cut it on site. Is purely a matter of costs, health and safety, but like, you know, mainly costs. And for a project of a certain size, I would say that it's worth it. If it's just to build one structure, it's not.
Is the system actually patented, you know, to you guys, because of all the R&D you've done? It's obviously it's near and dear to you, and you'd hate for someone to take it.
So we operate in such a way that whenever we design something new, we just make sure that we are the ones that build it first, and then if someone copies it, we're just like,
yeah. Fantastic, thank you for that. So the next question is from Ben Price. He's our social media secretary for the NDSA. He says, I love the project and the ideas behind it. Thanks, I'm a big fan of woodwork and the material as a whole. But given the machining process involved, I'm curious as to whether there are plans to investigate the system or other versions of it in different materials, or even to mix the materials together to create hybrid structures.
Yeah, I mean, you can mix materials. You can develop anything that you want. The fact is, for us was we had an allocated budget, we had a brief, so we had to respond to that. But obviously, our way of doing things is always very open. So we love to experiment different things, and we actually experimented cutting with different boards, not just plywoods. It all works. It's all possible, you know. There are boards from different companies, Pinsa, whatever. There are so many. So it's really up to your imagination. It's a space that is up for grabs, kind of.
Yeah, but also that kind of structure that we designed, we felt that this needs to be done with plywood. This method that we are using, this requires plywood, or I mean, it can be other sheet material, as long as it has the structural kind of stability. But you know, the technology that we're using, it's kind of adapted to this kind of material. But obviously, if we had a CNC that cuts metal, we would probably design things differently. We would combine. So we're always kind of focused on using the right tool for the job, and for this job, the CNC was the right tool, and therefore plywood was the right material.
Yeah, the choice.
But it starts at the beginning. I think when you come up with a concept, and then you evaluate whether you can make it work with something else.
I mean, the choice is dictated by the brief, by building physics, like, you know, the performance of the structural performance is not the same if it's MDF or if it's plywood, and then it's a matter of aesthetic. So in our case, in this case, we like to have it all in plywood, but it can be done differently.
I mean, it certainly has an elegance to it, I think, with material that's chosen, definitely. And I suppose it's quite a fashionable, popular material at the moment. You know, we recently had I say recently, in the last year in our practice in Nottingham, they did a plywood circular staircase. And I know that became quite an interesting project, with the amount of humidity and moisture in the plywood actually caused the stair to shrink, and we lost a tread over the entire height. So, you know, I can understand some of the technical aspects involved. Moving on, Sarah has asked a question. She said, very cool project. Were you able to integrate any services into the arches, such as power, drainage, etc.?
Yeah. So in this case, the drainage is always that, you know, there is a drainage in every arch that is in the ground somewhere, but you don't know. I mean, every arch has it in a different place, and then there is a pipe usually that comes out from the side of the arches, and it drains the rail track above, and that is like constantly leaking. Yeah, there is constantly water coming out. So what we did was to build the plug-in structure to allow tolerance for the ducts or for the pipes or for the drainage to be on the side. And then what we did in our structure was to create a path for the electrical cables to have lights. Yeah, so the lights were coming out in conjunction to the joint between the beams. So we did designed, you know, the space and we cut holes for the cables and the services to go in the structure. And but obviously, because we design things and we come up with a 3D model and the drawings of every single part, you know, we are able to adapt it to cut bigger holes if we need to have ventilation or whatever, you know. So it's a very adaptable structure, because we have the keys of manufacturing basically what we need. But yeah, everything can be adapted to have electricity or ventilation,
Yeah, but the
kind of
way
service.
the concept worked is that you plug in this kind of freestanding room, and then you just bring in the pipes through the side of it.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, the way that you've designed those modules, it lends itself to feeding services through it, and it almost kind of reflects the Pompidou Centre in some way. You know, it's kind of got that kind of vibe to it. Right, I suppose this leads on to a question that Josh, our president/chairs, asked, but because he can't ask it in the Q&A, he's asked it in the chat. So he's put, were there any challenges that came up on site that surprised you in those early builds, post-occupancy? I suppose you kind of answered some of them with regards to services, but was there anything else?
Yeah, I think a great challenge was to understand the correct way to install the beams. Because we had our idea before, like we wanted to have two, how do you call them,
Pulleys.
Pulleys, yeah.
Electric pulleys.
Yeah, electric pulleys to lift the beams to the exact right points and then secure them in place. But because the two walls were like set at the right distance with, you know, a couple of millimeters of tolerance, the beams were like going up and getting stuck, you know, so it was impossible to kind of manage the pulling of the beams exactly as per our 3D model, you know. So there was a bit of a difference between what you show in a diagram and what you can actually build on site. So to build the beams, actually, we had to create what you said at the beginning, like a modular scaffolding. That in this case, because the beams are modular to the boxes, they were just, you know, 4 boxes underneath, and we were sitting the beams on 4 boxes and then connect them and join them on site. So there was a learning process. There was a process of discovery of challenges on site. Also, securing and accessing the structure from below, that was quite tricky and quite interesting. But yeah, you know.
Well, and if, things like what we design and fabricate is going to be accurate because this is cut by the machine. The only uncertainty comes from the site itself. So the way we prevented big problems is by placing the structure on the adjustable risers, which allowed us to make the base completely straight, and then on the straight base we build something that we know is accurate.
And also in between the structure and the walls, there was a tolerance. There was an air gap, and that air gap is needed to allow the bricks to ventilate and to breathe. So you don't want to build, you know, next to that. But also it was kind of allowing us to have some space to fit the waterproofing layer, and, you know, have our hands like to secure things and clip the insulation on top. So it's really a matter of allowing the right tolerances to avoid problems on site. Yeah, and it's a process that we learned by, you know, building the first one.
There's a video on YouTube of time lapse of us building this. So if you're bored at some point, you can have a look.
Fantastic. Well, I'm conscious of time, so there's probably time for one last question. Again, this is from Jason. He's put 2, but I think we'll just go to the last one, because actually this is a question I wanted to ask. He's put, final question, have you been able to calculate an approximate price based on the volume of the space per square meter cubed? So I suppose with all your R&D, you've probably managed to get it down to the finite cost now. Are you willing to share that with us to give us a bit of an idea?
I actually don't remember it, but but it was less than stud and plasterboard wall, if that helps.
Right. So yeah,
it was affordable. Yeah. So the whole concept was how to make an affordable structure. So we obviously spent a lot of time in developing the R&D stage and developing every single aspect of it. But then in the end, the structure can be built relatively quickly and manufactured with a good level of precision. So if you factor in the saving of the labor, you know, like instead of being on site with contractor like screwing everything, you build something that is quickly assembled, and the fact that you use materials that are the structure and the finishes at the same time.
Yeah,
you end up with a quite a competitive cost. I don't remember the number, and I don't want to say not to have it like fixed on YouTube forever. So I don't want to say that, but it was affordable and quite competitive compared to the standard way of building.
No, I mean, just when you said, you know, comparing it to a sheet of plasterboard, it does kind of make complete sense. I mean, we've got a couple of archways in Nottingham. Hopefully one day we'll see one of these up here.
We can start cutting now.
Yeah, definitely. Paul, we'll have to get onto that. We'll have to speak to Nottingham City Council.
Well, from my understanding is that they did actually have either an expression of interest or a competition here in Nottingham with probably just over the last it was more than 12 months ago. I think, Jonas, when we spoke initially, we just missed that window, but I don't know what became of it. And you know, there's more than one set of abandoned railway arches or underutilized railway arches in Nottingham, as is the case in most of England cities.
It doesn't have to be railway arches. It can be parks, can be, I mean, triangular or rectangular space. Doesn't have to be the arch as much as you love them.
We've got plenty of caves you can fill.
That's a very good point. Nottingham, if you're aware, guys, is built over a whole labyrinth of a cave network. The whole city sits on a
potential for affordable workspace.
Absolutely, yeah. And I do know that there have been efforts made into this. So, yeah, look, we'll certainly be passing your details and indeed this video once it's uploaded onto Nottingham City Council. I'm sure there'll be several personnel interested in there.
Yeah,
we're supposed to be unbiased as well, Paul. We should probably say Derby as well.
Yeah,
there's plenty of Derby's. Derby was an industrial heartland in the Industrial Revolution, so there is plenty of disused railway arches and things in Derby as well.
That's right. I mean, yeah. So we'll be sure to circulate this. Look, thanks very much for the presentation. That was exceptional.
Thank you for that.
And I hope that we have you back at some time to either follow on what's happened if you manage to complete the other two, or indeed another additive or rapid prototyping project would be great also. So thanks everybody for attending. As I said at the beginning, please subscribe to our social media platforms, like, share, distribute the content, and hopefully see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Have a great evening.
Thank you, guys.